Step is there. I'm going to pull it out just. years I did this, I did it with just one phone. Which I did it with a phone and iPad, and I had separate screens going on YouTube and Facebook. So they were both part of the same group. Whereas this time I've got push a signal out to a server, which then pushes it off to Facebook. It's a bit complicated. Yep, we're going to kick off. We're going to start. Good afternoon. Can you hear me down the back? Good, good. I call on the Guard Commander of the Catafalque Party to have the Catafalque Party take up its positions around the memorial. My name is Rob Crossing. My father, Warwick Crossing, and his brother Dick fought in the second. After my father died, Archie Campbell, also of the second, was closely involved in the raising of my family through legacy. I'm now on the committee of the 2nd Commando Association, and I'm honoured to be our MC again today. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathered, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I've been asked to pass on some apologies from people who are not able to be with us today. Her Excellency, Ms. Inés Maria de Almeida, Ambassador of Timor-Leste, sends her apology. Ms. de Almeida and the peoples of Timor-Leste are represented here today by the Honorary Consul of Timor-Leste in Perth, Mr. Ted Graham, AM, and I welcome Mr. Graham. The Honourable Scott Morrison, MP, Prime Minister of Australia, gives his apology. He and the Federal Government are represented here today by Mr. Vince Connolly, MP, Federal Member for Stirling, and Mr. Andrew Hastie, MP, Federal Member for Canning. I welcome them. Senator the Honourable Linda Reynolds, CSC, Minister for Defence, gives her apology, as does Senator the Honourable Maurice Payne, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade. Senators Reynolds and Payne are also represented here today by Mr. Connolly and Mr. Hastie. The Honourable Anthony Albanese MP, Leader of the Opposition federally, gives his apology. Mr. Patrick Gorman MP is with us, representing Mr. Albanese here today. I welcome Mr. Gorman. The Honourable Mark McGowan MLA, Premier of WA, gives his apology. He and the State Government are represented here today by the Honourable Peter Tenley AM MLA, Minister for Housing, Fisheries, Veterans Issues and Asian Engagement. I welcome Mr. Tenley. I almost gave myself the giggles then by saying the Minister for Fishies, but I'll move on. The Honourable Lisa Harvey MLA, Leader of the Opposition in WA, gives her apology. Ms Harvey and the State Opposition are represented here today by Mr Sean Lestrange MLA, Shadow Minister for Corrective Services, Emergency Services, Defence Issues and Racing and Gaming, and I welcome Mr Lestrange. The State President of the Returned and Services League, Mr Peter Aspinall, has given his apology. The RSL of WA is represented here today by Board Member Mr Bill College, and I welcome Mr College. The District Governor of Rotary District 9465 Western Australia, Mr Colin Burns, has sent his apology. Rotary District 9465 is represented today by Mr Max Bird, who is the International Manager of Commando Rotary Club and the Project Manager for Rotary Projects Timor-Leste East Team, a position he's held since 2010. I welcome Mr Bird. Also invited by Rotary District 9465 and laying their wreath today is Mr Bevan Piper, an Australian Army veteran who received the Ambassador for Peace Medal from the South Korean government, and I welcome Mr Piper. Ms Aisling Blackmore, the Chair of Australian Red Cross, has sent her apology. The Australian Red Cross is represented here today by a member of the WA Advisory Board of the Red Cross, Mr Ron Withnell, and I welcome Mr Withnell. We've received an apology from the President of Legacy WA, Legatee Matt Granger, and I welcome Legatee David Durant, who is here today representing Legacy WA. I also note apologies from the Honourable Kim Beazley AC, Governor of Western Australia, the Honourable Sean Sibma MLC, State Shadow Minister for Ports, Government Accountability and Procurement, Public Sector Integrity and Performance and Veterans Issues, Ms Joanne Pollard, President of Timor-Leste Vision, the President of Seroptimist International of WA Joondalup, Ms Teria Savalias, and Ms Kate Haydock. I also welcome, I welcome a drink of water. I also welcome the Commanding Officer and Regimental Sergeant Major of the Special Air Service Regiment, other members of the SAS Regiment, members of the Timor-Leste community, Commander Alastair Putt of the Royal Australian Naval Reserve, the Honourable Alana McTiernan MLC, Minister for Regional Development, Agriculture and Food, Ports, Minister assisting the Minister for State Development, Jobs and Trade, Mr Andrew Hastie MP, Federal Member for Canning, Mr John Carey MLA, Parliamentary Secretary to the Premier and son of the late Jack Carey, 2nd veteran and President of the original 2nd Commando Association, Mr Paul Shearer, President of the WA branch of the Australian Commando Association, from the WA Museum Boola-Bardip, Mr Stephen Anstey, Co-Curator, Mr Alec Cole, CEO, and Ms Diana Jones, Executive Director, Collections and Research. Mr John Cram, who is on the committee of our association and is here today representing Friends of Timor Containers. Mr Angus Callender, President of the HMAS Armidale Association, Dr Erica Smythe AC, and members, family and friends of the 2nd Commando Association. Thank you all for joining us at our annual commemoration ceremony of the 2nd Commando Association. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, and this is the 71st time this ceremony has been held. Sadly, the two men who were our last surviving veterans, John Snowy Went and John Jack Hanson, passed away during the year since our last ceremony. However, the sad fact that there are no surviving 2nd veterans does not lessen the importance of this annual ceremony of recognition and remembrance of the 2nd and the East Timorese. We are once again streaming this ceremony live to the internet, so if you're watching this from Dili, from Delaware or Doodlakine, thank you for joining us as well. For those of us who are physically present, I invite each of you to sign our attendance book after the ceremony if you haven't already done so. Please feel free to write comments there as well. I'm very pleased that our catafalque party again comprises Army cadets from 53 Army Cadet Unit Wanneroo, who are with us under the command of COO Jackson Broad. The 53 Army Cadet Unit has provided a very sharp and dignified catafalque party for several years, and we're very grateful for the impressive job they do. As part of my introduction, as this is a commemoration ceremony, I want to say something at the outset about the 2nd service and its achievements. In World War II, when it was looking likely that Japan would enter the war, Australia decided to set up its very first unit of commandos, and these were selected from volunteers, mostly from WA. Wanting to protect Australia from a Japanese invasion, the government was concerned about the islands to Australia's north, one of which is Timor. The 2nd, also known as the Double Reds because of their colour patch, arrived in East Timor on the 12th of December 1941, just days after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. At that time, East Timor was a Portuguese colony. Portugal was neutral in the war, and because we expected that the Japanese would offer little or no resistance to the Japanese, the Double Reds were given the job of stopping them in East Timor. By the time the Japanese did invade, the 270 men of the Double Reds were dispersed in small groups around Dili, the capital of East Timor. As the Japanese force initially numbered about 6,000, the Double Reds were hugely outnumbered. Many of them had malaria and they couldn't get resupplies with anything or even communicate with Australia for 2 months. However, theirs is a story of true resilience. Using what they had, they began a relentless campaign of guerrilla attacks against the Japanese, ambushing them, sniping, attacking quickly and efficiently before disappearing. The Japanese called them the men who came out of the ground. Because the Double Reds had always been respectful to the East Timorese locals, they had their respect and invaluable assistance, and the East Timorese supplied them with information about Japanese movements, with food, and sometimes help in combat. After 2 months, by relying on their wits and determination, the Double Reds built a radio from parts they had found or scrounged and managed to contact Australia and get boots, ammunition and other vital supplies dropped to them. So effective was the guerrilla campaign of the Double Reds that the Japanese brought in many reinforcements. The 270 or so men of the Double Reds, later augmented to about 700 with reinforcements from the 2nd, 4th, held some 9,000 Japanese at bay for almost a year. The 2nd was eventually evacuated to Australia before going on to fight in New Guinea and New Britain. As Paul Cleary said, despite the many extraordinary facets to this epic and guerrilla warfare, it appears as a minor footnote in most histories of the Second War, overshadowed by the New Guinea and Pacific campaigns. Indeed, Australia's official history of Second World War includes most of the Timor campaign as an appendix. Few people today are even aware that Australian forces fought in Portuguese Timor and that as many as 40,000 to 60,000 Timorese died as a result of this conflict, far exceeding the losses of any other nation that supported Australians in war ever. Although we are here to commemorate the deeds of the men of the 2nd and the East Timorese, we also remember and give our thanks, of course, to all Australian servicemen and women who have served this country in any conflict or peacekeeping role, and all of those who have helped them, including their families. I mentioned the men of the 2nd a moment ago because there were no women in the unit. One other particular tribute I want to pay today is to the women who were involved in World War II in East Timor, either directly or from afar. Bearing in mind that the unit was out of contact and missing in action for 2 months, I first pay tribute to the mothers, wives and girlfriend of the men of the 2nd for what they endured during the war. It must have been hard enough without learning that the Japs had invaded and that our men had fallen out of contact. Mick Press tells me that after news broke in February 42 that the 2nd was missing in action, his mother and aunt went to Mass every day during those months to pray for the men's safe return. After the unit established radio contact with Darwin, they kept going to Mass every day for a couple of weeks to say thanks. Noel Strickman tells me that his father's mother received a telegram saying that her son was missing in action and they paid her the accrued money that was owing to him. There's a certain finality in that kind of message. Imagine how she felt. Thankfully, she received some much better news after a couple of months when the unit made radio contact. I pay tribute as well to the many East Timorese who helped our soldiers in 1942, many of whom were women. Perhaps the first such woman who comes to mind is Donabella Martins, who fed and tended to the wounds of Keith Hayes after the ration truck massacre. Both Keith and the unit's RMO, Doc Dunkley, shared the view that Donabella's actions had saved Keith's life, and those actions were at great personal risk to herself and her family. Speaking of families, the Japanese killed tens of thousands of the East Timorese who helped our soldiers. For the survivors, the difficult role of raising one's family was no doubt made immeasurably more difficult by having one's husband murdered for helping our troops. Next, I pay tribute to the so-called comfort women, the women and girls who are made to be sexual slaves of the Japanese soldiers, not just in East Timor, but in all parts of Southeast Asia that were occupied by the Japanese in the war. An estimated 200,000 Asian women were victims of sexual violence by Japanese soldiers during World War II. Most documented cases are in Korea, the Philippines, Taiwan, although hundreds of women in Indonesia, Thailand, China and East Timor were first forced to serve as comfort women to Japanese soldiers. This wasn't some sequence of random rapes. Sexual slavery was an organised and official part of the Japanese occupation. At least 20 East Timorese women have testified at public hearings in Japan and East Timor on their experience as comfort women. At one of those hearings, a woman called Lim Fa, who had been forced to work in a comfort station in Ailu, East Timor, said this: "At the comfort station I was called Hanako and had to serve about 20 Japanese soldiers a day. When the work was over, I couldn't even stand and walk. It was very hard and I never thought of running away. I thought that if I did, my parents would be killed." Although I talk about us paying tribute, mere words seem inadequate. Lastly, in this sombre introduction, I want to draw attention to the fact that a number of our soldiers were very troubled souls after they returned to Australia, and some of the troubles only got worse over the years. In some cases, the wives of our soldiers suffered directly or indirectly at the hands of their husbands. Post-traumatic stress disorder as a diagnosis or a term was not yet with us, but it was very much a thing. Many returned soldiers suffered from depression and or anxiety, most of those self-medicated with alcohol. I don't know of any statistics, but I know that there were instances of domestic violence perpetrated against the wives of returned second soldiers. The suicide rate among our returned soldiers was also higher than in the ordinary population. I'm certainly not trying to justify or condone domestic violence, but I'm not here to judge those men. I'm grateful for their military service and for the fact that I'm not in their shoes. I ask that we remember what they and their wives went through. Today, we are very fortunate to have the daughter of second member Lieutenant John Burridge, the very talented Terry Burridge, to lead us in singing the national anthem. Please stand.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Please be seated. In a few moments, we will lay wreaths in tribute, and I'd like to give you some information about the sequence of events. In a moment, our piper, Corporal Damien Stillwell, will begin piping a lament. While the lament is playing, the first wreath will be laid on behalf of the 2nd Commando Association by Amanda and Warwick Broad, the parents of Jackson Broad, who is the CUO in charge of today's catafult party. After that, other wreaths will be laid in a sequence that has been communicated to those who have told us that they'd like to lay a wreath. If you haven't been in touch with us and you'd like to lay a wreath, please feel free to do so. But please see Colleen, who's standing up by the table of wreaths at the back, before you do so. Thank you. Our thanks to those who have laid wreaths today. Bill Epps was an original member of the engineers section of the 2nd Second, and he served as a Bren gunner on Timor and in New Guinea. After the war, Bill was a very active member of the 2nd Second Commando Squadron Association, and he never missed an Anzac Day dawn service. His family always attended with him. The birthday of Bill's wife, Jess, was on Anzac Day, and it became the family tradition for the Eppses to have a barbecue breakfast in Kings Park after the service. Some might say that's small consolation for getting up before dawn on your birthday every year. Bill's son Peter was raised on a diet of the history of the 2nd Second, and he either attended or drove people to and from pretty much every 2nd Second event with his old man. When Peter had his two children, the tradition of attending the dawn service followed by Jess's birthday barbecue carried on, and now Peter's daughter, Chantel Cummins, and her two children attend Anzac Day services. Chantel also takes a keen interest in our association and is the most recent member to join our committee and has recently become the association secretary. Chantel has kindly agreed to deliver the address today. Please welcome Chantel.
Thank you, Rob, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very proud to be here today as the granddaughter of William. And probably before I get any further, I do get a bit emotional. I thought I'd get through this, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So the granddaughter of William, or Bill as he was better known. As Rob mentioned, I'm the newest committee member, with this being my 2nd year involved with the association in a formal sense. But my involvement with the second... Is it better? With the 2nd Second Commandos goes back as far as I can remember, but I'll mention that a little later. Grandpa Bill was an original member of the unit and was a corporal in the engineers section. He was a demolition bloke, and much to my son's delight, he got to blow stuff up. Grandpa Bill enlisted into the Australian Military Forces in Perth on the 29th of August 1940 and joined the 2nd Independent Company in July 1941, where he was promoted to corporal.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right.
Yeah, right.
On the 8th of December that same year, the day the unit sailed for Timor. When the Japanese landed in Timor on the 20th of February 1942, Bill, being in the engineers section, was involved in the blowing up of the stone bridge over the Glano River as the Aussies retreated on the first day. Their delight was somewhat short-lived or half-hearted, as whilst they stopped the vehicles crossing the river, the Japanese simply waded through the not quite waist-deep water, slowed but not stopped. Bill left Timor, heading for Australia with the rest of the unit in December 1942. After a short leave, he headed to New Guinea. But being the engineer sergeant in charge of the unit's stores, he had the luxury of accompanying these aboard US Navy ship City of Fort Worth, much to the jealousy of his comrades, as they all knew, unlike the bully beef and dried powdered eggs they would get on their journey, Bill was going to have the luxury of being served fresh steaks and real ice cream. Joke was on poor Bill though, as he donated much of his meals to the fishers, as his well-known lack of sea legs saw the contents of his stomach overboard for most of the journey. Whilst in New Guinea, the unit was re-established and they didn't need as many engineers, and Bill, suffering terribly with malaria, was sent home in 1942. He became a demolitions instructor at the training establishment in Kapuka in New South Wales. In December of 1944, he returned to WA and was discharged in October 1945. Bill met my Nana Jess in the mid-30s, and like many of the partners and wives, waited nervously for his return from war, especially when the unit went missing for several months in Timor. They did not waste much time upon his return and married in late 1944, with their firstborn just a mere 9 months later. Nana was a dedicated veteran's wife, and each fortnight during the 50s and 60s, with Bill and their two sons, Terry and Peter, came and maintained this very spot to continue to honour the men of the 2nd Second. Nana also helped Grandpa, a printer by trade, to print out and send out the newsletter every quarter, with Grandpa printing it and Nana handwriting all the addresses and posting them. Nana spent a lot of time helping organise events and hosted many a widow when they came to WA. Nana was my link to Grandpa Bill. Sorry. As he passed away in 1974, 4 years before I was born, so I sadly never got to meet him. Far out. I remember Nana going on her trips, either to the second safaris or visiting the veterans and their widows. And one time in particular, Nana told us she was going to Adelaide for 3 weeks to visit one of the widows. We got a call to say, well, whilst I'm here, it's just a quick trip to Brisbane, as the Brizzy Expo was on. Then she ended up in New Zealand. She came home 3 months later. Nana did a lot for the veterans, their wives and the association, and was the first wife to become an associate life member of the Second. My brother Ryan and I spent a lot of time with Nana during school holidays and on the weekends, and we used to go to many of the old boys' houses for catch-ups. I remember going to Don Turton's property in Keysbrook and my brother and I running amok. I think these wonderful memories and the stories Nana and Dad told us about the men has never left me and instilled me a deep-rooted connection to our family's rich military history. Far out, sorry. The last post on Anzac Day always brings a tear to my eye. And as Rob mentioned earlier, Anzac Day was extra special for us as it was also Nana's birthday, and we always did the family tradition of a breakfast. My own family now continues to mark Anzac Day, and along with many others stood at the bottom of our driveway this year at dawn with the radio on and a candle in hand. There is a saying that we all die twice. The first time is when we leave this earth, and the second is the last time somebody speaks our name. The men of the second may have died once, but us all being here today and every year hereafter, these men will live on. Thank you, and sorry for all the tears.
Thank you, Chantel. If someone down the back can't hear what's going on at any point, please wave and we'll sort it out. Thank you. After our ceremony last year, I received a very impressive letter from Olivia Hartstone, who was then 10 years old. Olivia is the great-granddaughter of Second veteran Stan Sadler, who died in 1993. It's very encouraging that young people like Olivia take a real interest in the incredible story of the Second and the debt that Australia owes to the peoples of Timor-Leste. In a moment, when I've stopped rabbiting on, Olivia will read a poem for us. That poem is called Return to Sender, Died of Wounds, and it was written by Marion Strobel. Marion Strobel, born in 1895, was an American poet and literary critic. She and her husband lived in Chicago and had 2 daughters. This powerful poem is about the pain, the heartache felt by those left behind when loved ones go away to fight a war. The central character of this poem appears to have been scarred by the horrific experience of having a letter returned to her during World War I marked Return to Sender, Died of Wounds. This poem is eerily conversational in its tone, the writer discussing with the listener which items of homely news she should commit to writing in a letter. She talks about the garden and the kids playing outside. She reminisces about her own childhood and she ponders how to address her letter. Pacific Fleet? Then, harking back from 1942 to that earlier letter, written more than 20 years before, she finishes by asking whether the contents of this letter will come back to her embalmed in an envelope, as if the unread words on the unseen pages would somehow be preserved for eternity like an embalmed body. Please welcome Olivia Hartstone. Now, just make sure you get that nice and close to your mouth and we're all good to go. I'll leave you to it. Okay. How's that? Good?
Return to Sender, Died of Wounds by Marion Strobel.
Sorry.
You asked if spring were here. I forgot to say that it was. Perhaps he won't get his letters either, but in case he does, I'll jot down for another sailor that buds are beginning to show, that is, on the bushes. On either side of the port crew shed there are clumps of green, but the elm is bare. A moment ago a pigeon flew under the eaves. Now, as I look, there are two. I'll tell him that the window's wide. Schoolboys are playing ball outside. A girl, like I was, with a plaid hair bow, trips on her skipping rope to watch one throw. Pacific Fleet should reach him. That letter, more than 20 years ago, came back. With this, if I should send it to you, this April 1942. Pigeons, green on the bushes, everything I see from this window. Gateway and sky. Boys playing ball, a girl skipping rope, return embalmed in an envelope.
It was brilliant. Thank you so much, Olivia. Before we read the names of the fallen, and by way of introduction to that, Stephen Anstey is a co-curator of the WA Museum, now known as WA Museum Bula Bardip, and he is the curator of its History Department collection. Stephen has long been a supporter of the Second Commando Association. In 2012, Stephen was the curator of the Debt of Honour exhibition, a fine display of historical artefacts, photos and audio-visual presentations that paid tribute to the support given by the East Timorese to our soldiers in 1942 and to the price in human lives that the East Timorese were made to pay for doing so. You've probably heard that the museum has undergone a huge redevelopment and is due to reopen next weekend. I was already excited about that, and then I heard that the display about the Second Commando Squadron is significantly bigger than it used to be. Thank you, Stephen. As Stephen comes forward to read the names of the fallen, please welcome him.
The fallen. These men of the Second died during active service in Timor, New Guinea and New Britain. Don Airy, Frank Alford, Ron Alexander, Jeff Barclay, Roy Beardman, Huey Brown, Lindsay Brown, Bob Chalmers, Bill Cheverton, Gordon Chiswell, Harry Cole, Harry Cotsworth, Dick Crowder, Owen Davies, Cyril Doyle, Bob Ewan, Bruce Gannon, Ken Hogg, Bill Holly, Phil Hopper, Peter Kemp, Paddy Knight, Tony Lane, Des Lilia, Stan Ludlow, Jack Maley, Laurie Maloney, Harvey Marriott, Eric Mitchell, Percy Mitchell, Les Mull, Gordon Mulqueeny, Reg Murray, Val Nagel, Jack Northey, Jim Pollard, Don Ramshaw, Keith Richards, Jack Simpson, Andy Smeaton, Fred Smith, Charlie Stanton, Alex Stewart, Bob Swift, George Thomas, Lindsay Thomas, John Walker, Dick Waller, Wally Wardy, Arthur Yeats. We honour the memory of these men. We also pay tribute to those members of the Second who have passed away since the war.
Thank you, Stephen. Our association's president, Ed Willis, is the son of Second veteran, the late Bill Willis. Many of you will be familiar with Ed's work as editor of our association's newsletter, Courier. Ed is a very prolific contributor to our website and Facebook page. Before COVID-19 changed everything, Ed also organised very successful tours of Timor-Leste. He's also involved in a project to record, map and make more accessible the many sites at which the Second fought in Timor-Leste. As Ed comes forward to deliver the President's report, please welcome him.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Rob. Distinguished guests, members, family and friends of the Second Commando Association. I'm honoured to address you for the first time today as the President of the Association, having taken over that role from John Denman. And thank you, John, for your contribution as President over the previous 2 years. As Rob referred to in his opening remarks, over the last 12 months, the last two men known to have served with the Second have passed away. John Snowy Went passed away at the age of 96 at Batu Bay, New South Wales on Thursday the 26th of March. Snowy served in New Guinea and New Britain as a member of 7th Section of Sea Troop. John Trelease, Jack Hansen, passed away aged 98 at Harvey Bay, Queensland on Tuesday the 26th of May 2020. Jack was an original member of the unit and served on Timor as a member of 6th Section of B Platoon. It is believed that only 2 other Australian men with a direct connection to the Timor campaign are living now. These are 98-year-old Alfred James Jim Elwood of Melbourne, who was a cipher specialist with Sparrow Force and Lancer Force headquarters, later a member of S Force, the Stay Behind Party, then later an operative with the SRD or Z Special, Operation Legato, before becoming a POW in Dili. The other man is 97-year-old Victor Raymond Ray Leonard, also of Melbourne, who was an ordinary seaman on the ill-fated HMAS Armidale that was sunk by Japanese aircraft on the 1st of December 1942 while approaching Timor to embark the second men who were going to be evacuated from the island. On the 12th of August, the Governor-General announced the award of a posthumous Victoria Cross to Ray Leonard's shipmate, ordinary seaman Edward Teddy Sheehan. The approval followed a rigorous campaign over some 30 plus years for Teddy Sheehan to be properly recognised for his courage and bravery under fire during the attack on Armidale by Japanese aircraft. On the 1st of December, an investiture will take place in Canberra where Gary Ivory, nephew of Teddy Sheehan, will be presented with the Victoria Cross by the Governor-General. Gary will then donate the medal to the Australian War Memorial. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a great impact on all of us. The Association has always had a strong interest in Timor-Leste. The veterans of the old association felt they owed a debt of honour to the people of Timor-Leste for the help they received that enabled them to survive and conduct their successful Commando campaign against the Japanese. As Rob has alluded to, the help and support the Timorese provided had terrible consequences for them during and after the campaign. Thankfully, Timor-Leste has survived the COVID-19 pandemic virtually unscathed by closing its borders to visitors and well-managed internal security measures. However, the border closure has curtailed the Association's usual efforts to undertake at least one supportive project this year, such as the Keith Hayes Memorial Classroom that was inaugurated in Dili at Dili International School in 2019. Also, unfortunately, as Rob mentioned, the Timor 1942 Commando campaign tours that I lead this year had 12 participants that were scheduled to go in April, May, had to be cancelled. However, I do hope the tours can be resumed once travel restrictions are lifted. Some of you who follow us on Facebook may have noticed that myself, in partnership with ex-SA SAS Officer Jim Truscott OAM have been awarded an Army History Unit research grant of $10,500 for the 2021 financial year. The grant has been awarded for the preparation of a World War II and East Timor and Australian Army site and travel guide. The grant money will be used to cover costs associated with additional site survey work in East Timor, particularly in the central and eastern areas of the country, and further in library and archival research in Darwin, Brisbane, Canberra and Melbourne. Thankfully, the conditions of the grant allow for extension of time to complete the travel associated with project because of the COVID-19 travel restrictions. Another development some people may have seen on our Facebook page and elsewhere is that I met with Andrew Hastie, the member of the House of Representatives for Canning, back in mid-August. And during the course of that meeting with Andrew, he said he would like to use the Second Timor story as the basis for a new award he wished to introduce for schools in the Canning electorate. I suggested the word resilience summed up the Second Timor campaign, and he agreed that the award would go ahead as the double Reds Resilience Award. As far as I know, at least 2 awards have already been made to well-deserving students in the Canning electorate fairly recently. And I've also been advised recently that Vince Connolly, the MHR for Stirling, has subsequently announced that he will also introduce the Resilience Award for schools in his electorate as well. Andrew and Vince are both with us today, and on behalf of the association, I acknowledge and thank Andrew for introducing the award, and Vince for adopting the consequence, and hope that it may spread to other electorates. Another development that's been ongoing is a bid on behalf of the association by Peter Epps and John Burridge that the unit be retrospectively awarded a unit citation for gallantry for its service on Timor. This hasn't been a straightforward exercise, and the submission is still working its way through the Defence Department's bureaucratic processes, but we're reasonably optimistic that we'll get a good outcome with that endeavour. Thank you to both Peter and John for their efforts there, and for Jim for his assistance with that as well. The association has also been concerned about the future of the Dere Memorial in the hills outside Dili, as the owner of the site has progressed with large-scale renovations to the cafe, museum and car park, and construction of new tourist accommodation. We are encouraged by the status of the renovations that have considerably improved the facilities and accessibility of the site. As a result of feedback and advice from the Federal Minister for Veterans Affairs, the association will consider submitting an application for a grant to restore the memorial flagpoles and plaques to a safe and secure location on the renovated site at Dare. This is hopefully will go ahead in consultation with the owner of the site. The association committee also thinks it might be an appropriate time to consider a more broadly based memorial to be established in Dili as well, and not only to continue to acknowledge the work of the second and second fourth independent companies, but the efforts also during World War II made by the Services Reconnaissance Department, the Royal Australian Navy, RAAF personnel who were killed in action on Portuguese Timor, and the Timorese people themselves. We feel that the new World War II memorial should be located in a more prominent, readily accessible and secure site in Dili. We have prepared a paper regarding that, which has been circulated to influential individuals and organisations. It's still early days, but it's hopeful that a consortium of interested parties can be formed to develop a project concept for such a memorial, have it costed and work out how it can be effectively implemented. In conclusion, I'd just like to thank Rob for continuing his sterling work preparing for this event, acting as Master of Ceremonies, and also for making his office available for our association committee meetings. But also I'd like to acknowledge his son Louis for his technical support today and for his ongoing management of the content and presentation of the very successful Double Reds website. Colleen Thornton Ward deserves acknowledgement for her long-standing work as Association Treasurer. And finally, to Sue Epps and Chantel Cummings for their secretarial support, and I'd just like to acknowledge Chantel's efforts today with her address, which I found very moving. That concludes my remarks. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks very much, Ed. I'm very pleased to be again handing the microphone to Terry Burridge. Terry will sing for us, "I'll Be Seeing You, We'll Meet Again." Please welcome Terry.
Thank you. I chose this medley of two songs to commemorate the life of Dame Vera Lynn, who died in June this year at the age of 103. Cathedral bells were tolling, and our hearts sang on. Was it the spell of Paris, or the April dawn? Who knows if we shall meet again? But when the morning chimes ring out again, I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that my heart and mind embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut tree for wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, Don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Terry. In a moment, I will ask a committee member and Terry's brother, Mr. John Burridge, MG, who won his Medal for Gallantry in Vietnam, to recite the ode. After that, the bugler will play the last post, the catafalque party will present arms, and that will be followed by a minute's silence. The silence will be broken by another bugle call, the rouse. Please stand.
I won't be singing. They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Please be seated. Thank you, John. That almost concludes this afternoon's ceremony. Please join me in thanking our piper, Corporal Damien Stillwell, and our bugler, Captain David Cusworth. After our ceremony, two things. Well, the first thing is I hope this rain doesn't rain. Looks like it's about to. The two things I was going to say are please remember to sign the attendance book if you haven't already done so. We'd really like you to sign in and leave a comment there. Secondly, please join us for a drink and a bite to eat at the Captain Stirling Hotel. We'll be there as soon as we can after this. In a moment, the catafalque party will withdraw, ending our ceremony. As they get ready to do that, please stand and join me in thanking them. Thank you all very much.